For those of you that are tuning in, welcome. I am Callie Ritchie, the broker over here at Ritchie Realty. Like I said, welcome, Mr. Hughes. You are the home inspector over at Journey Home Inspections. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you and I have been working together for several years now. You've you worked with a lot of our clients, a lot of our agents' clients, a lot of my colleagues. You do a lot of work for them, and you've even done a personal inspection on this home that I'm in today. So
I did. How about that?
I know. So you come with a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience. So thank you for coming on today. So
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right in here, because I know a lot of people that are tuning into this, whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're a seasoned buyer or a seasoned seller or whatever the case is, let's just start with educating those that may not know, what is a home inspection?
Well, so, I'm a professional inspector, licensed by the state of Texas, Texas Real Estate Commission, just like you are, right? I mean, you're licensed by Texas Real Estate Commission, TREC, what we call it. And an inspector goes through a rigorous amount of training, education to learn all kinds of different trades. We're generalists by trade, so we know something about everything, about all the different components of the house. And we are hired to be able to go into a house and look at it through our special set of filters, our eyes. And our goal is for our clients, my clients, to be able to see the house through my set of eyes.
So who is it that hires you? The buyer, the seller, the real estate agent? Who?
Yeah, well, 99% of the time it's the buyer. Occasionally I'll do some what we call pre-listing inspections. I actually have one coming up on Monday where these homeowners are going to do some repairs to their house. And before they get really fully involved with it, they kind of want to know, well, where are we starting? If there's anything that we need to address more than just remodeling, let's get on that and then go forth with the remodel.
So what is the buyers are paying you? Because I know some people would, especially if they're first-time home buyers that haven't done this before, they ask what kind of money I need up front. And I usually tell them, well, okay, you've got your earnest money, you've got your option money, which we'll kind of talk a little bit about here. But you also need to have money set aside for that home inspection. I know they vary based upon square footage, but in general, can you give us some insight on what that costs to hire you to come out and inspect a home?
Absolutely. So you're right. It is really based on a lot of different things, square footage being one of them, age of the house, and then all the different components that might be of the house. And what I mean by components is a pool. I'm licensed to inspect pools. I'm licensed to inspect irrigation systems, septic systems, wells. And when we start throwing on different things and stuff like that, it's going to increase the cost. But I would say for the average, they can expect to pay anywhere from $450 to maybe $550, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. Some of my buyers come with me and they go, well, can we have it inspected before we go into contract or before we write an offer? And yes, you could if the sellers are willing to do that, but there's really no point of doing that until we get you and lock you into at least, a contract. And in that contract, we have what's called the option period. Where we pay the seller $100 or a couple $100. That'll be credited to the buyer at closing, but that's for that time to do that inspection. That's when the inspection is going to happen. What that allows us to do is to see what is wrong with the concerns that are with the house. I mean, there's going to be a zillion different things, but we pick and choose which are the most critical, and we're able to negotiate some of those repairs or ask for a price reduction to cover that. So even though that cost might be some hundreds of dollars to hire you to come out, it's worth it at the end because we are able to save money in the long run.
Absolutely. Usually it pays for itself.
Tell us a little bit about what do you normally see? I mean, we've got, what is the average number of pages on an inspection? And out of those pages, what do you typically see over and over and over again on inspection reports?
Golly, I would say probably the shortest report I've ever sent off was probably, and it was a very clean house, and it probably was 25 pages long. And I've sent reports over 100 pages before, because Again, our goal is for clients, our buyers, clients, whoever they might be, to be able to see the house through our sets of eyes. So I take a lot of pictures that are going to be loaded in the report, and then I'm just talking about a lot of different things. A lot of people have to understand that I'm inspecting the house as it was built by today's standards. Not, I don't go back to 1902 when I inspect a, over 100-year-old house and look up the code or building standards for the house when it was built back then. I'm comparing it to what it's supposed to be done today. And so, my report's going to be filled with that. So I talk a lot about building standards and whatnot, but things that show up in my report on and on and on and on are unfortunately a lot of times when people do it themselves. We've got a lot of great TV programs out there on DIY and HGTV, and I love to watch them. I'm a Fixer Up fan, and our Hometown, all these other shows. I love them. It's a lot of fun. But when we see mom and pops and everybody else, Uncle Joe, doing repairs that, in the electrical panel box that really should be done by a professional. That's when we start to see those. So a lot of things that we're seeing when folks do remodels in the kitchen or bathrooms, they don't necessarily do the plumbing correctly. So that's kind of a common thing. Other things here in the North Texas, just 2 or 3 nights ago, we had a nice little hailstorm come through. Roofs are a huge thing because I think the average life expectancy of a roof in North Texas, last I heard, was about 7 years. Mm-hmm. And they can put on a 30 or 50-year shingle, do all kinds of stuff, right? But baseball size hail is just going to laugh at a 30-year-old or a 30-year shingle.
Yeah, and I get that a lot, from a lot of my sellers that put up that 30-year shingle. And the thing is it might be a 30-year shingle, but in the state where we're at, our local market area is just I don't know that I've ever seen one last for 30 years.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
And I think you brought up a very valid point that you're inspecting it today based upon today's codes, not on the codes of when the house was built. Those things that were pre-code, like not code today. I know a lot of I sense a lot of the buyers, they think, well, we've got to bring it up to code. But that's not necessarily the case. It's not required, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
There are a couple of safety hazards that have been brought up that may need to be addressed that are code now. A lot of times the new codes come about because of they found something safety, with that. And so those change every year. There's no way to really keep a house 100% up to par with code unless it's new construction, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
and even though I'm not a code inspector, I'm still going to address those things. And I tell folks that all the time simply because, one, I'm required to by the state of Texas, but then two, if they ever have to have any work done on the house, any permitted work done in the panel, if they're going to add a pool or upgrading something, and they don't know about those things that weren't necessarily brought up to code when they purchased the house. They do now because of the report. So if they do plan on adding a pool or a jacuzzi or whatever it might be that needs to be permitted work, they can understand that instead of just kind of being blindsided about, I can't add a pool on a 125 amp panel, from my 1942 house that is a 2-wire open ground system. You want me to change this up?
I mean, I can say that when I'm walking or when I'm doing, getting those reports from you on pre-owned homes, again, just sticking with pre-owned homes right now, a lot of things that I see pop up routinely are windows that have lost their seal. I see AC to service the AC. I do see some things that are related to code, such as the gas piping or something like that has to be bonded in a different way.
Absolutely.
I see these things routinely on the inspection reports. When somebody's reviewing that 25 or 100-page report, what are some of the most critical things that you as a home inspector, when you're meeting with that buyer, what are some of the most critical things that you recommend paying attention to?
Safety. I talk about it all the time. I've got a family, 2 daughters, a wife, and clients are hiring me to look at the house and and go through that. But I think one of my biggest concerns is safety for, it could be electrical, it could be wires that are bare inside walls or panels, overheated breakers. It could be no carbon monoxide detectors or smoke detectors in bedrooms. Things like that we see all the time as well. Safety concerns could be no handrail on stairs, staircases or something like that. So, going back to building concerns or building standards and code concerns, safety is never really going to be grandfathered in.
What are those big ticket items to really kind of pay attention to?
So, everybody thinks, I think the number one thing that I talk with folks all the time, and they're just right off the bat, and it's honestly at the top of my report, every report that I write, is foundation. And I think a lot of people think we live here in North Texas, we got expansive soil that moves around a lot. There's a lot of clay in it, so when it gets wet, it really shrinks. When it dries out, it really expands. It's constantly going on underneath our houses. And when we put a hard surface, a slab on top of that soil, it's just going to move. And so those are big. That's probably one of the biggest things that we call out. That if it's been repaired, you've got a lifetime warranty. And I tell folks that all the time. Hey, you're a step ahead of the game. As long as you do what's within the requirements of that warranty, you've got a lifetime warranty on the foundation. That's pretty awesome.
For our buyers that are out there, that are first-time buyers or repeat buyers, whatever, what kind of thing, obviously we want to say hands down, when you get into contract, get in touch with your inspector, get in touch with Bryan, have that inspection done. But as they're walking the property, trying to decide, if this might be a good house to make an offer on, what are some things that just the general person can just walk out when they're looking at the house? What kind of things can they look at?
So I always start with just walking up to the house. So if the driveway is going to be poured separately from the house, the driveway is a much thinner pad. But if that driveway is heaved up a few inches above where it goes into the garage, well, we might have some foundation issues. I think of all the different commercials that you see on TV. If we've got cracks on the walls and doors and windows that don't open, that's all good stuff. So just be mindful of that. While you're walking the house, if you feel a lot of movement in that floor, up and down, and almost kind of feel dizzy or something like that, pay attention to those things. Look for cracks. And I get asked about cracks all the time, and every house is going to have a crack. You know that. If they're straight line cracks, that's not as big of a deal. When they start to become straight line cracks horizontally or at a diagonal, chasing away from a door opening or a window opening, and then that door doesn't quite shut or it rubs really bad, when we go diagonal, that's when we're breaking a piece of sheetrock or a piece of plaster on a wall. And it takes a little more force to break it. If we're just nice and straight, that's just a seam crack. It's a couple pieces of sheetrock that they couldn't get together anymore, so they kind of split up and said their differences and moved on. And then it's, the brick on the outside of the house as well. We're going to have seam cracks between the brick and the mortar. I see that all the time. But when we start breaking the brick, instead of just the crack between the brick and the mortar, when we actually break that brick, it takes a little more force to break a brick and cause a little more movement in the foundation. Cracks in tile, that's another thing that we see a lot.
Okay, so if we're looking at a house, we're not going to go and get on the roof. We're going to let, all that happen during the inspection. But Absolutely. As you gave me a good piece of advice earlier when we were talking that, hey, step away from the house.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not just hail that really damages our roofs, but it's wind. When we get these big wind gusts. So if you're out for a walk with the dog or pulling up, just look at your roof. And if you see a shingle in your yard, it's probably come from your roof. Or if you see missing shingles, you obviously want to address that sooner than later, because that's just going to cause more and more damage.
What do your buyers typically ask you?
So their biggest concerns, again, are going to be foundation, they're going to be roof, and then it's usually heating and air conditioning.
Okay. Yeah. What are some things that sellers can do to walk around as they're getting the house ready that they can look for, that they can do to minimize some of the issues that come up on inspections?
Yeah, so I think we got touched on one of them just just a bit ago about the roof. Take a walk around. You don't have to climb on a ladder, and just take a walk around. And if you see any bare spots or missing shingles, then you might want to have a roofer come out and do some repair work. Other things are, or I'm sure that you're telling them as well, to kind of declutter, get their house ready to show, but then also get their house ready to inspect. The more we can see in a house, the better we can report on it. The last thing I want to do is say, hey, Callie, I wasn't able to get to the panel box or the water heater.
And we do see that.
Yeah, because things were in the way and we just couldn't get to it safely. Repairing screens on windows or other things that are pretty easy to do. Weather stripping on doors, making sure that those are intact, and sealing the doors nicely. You know, if we've got big trees around our house, trim those branches away from our. They aren't, rubbing the shingles on the roof or anything like that.
Okay, just something simple as making sure you have new light bulbs in, because when you come out, you're not. If there's one out, you're not going to go stick a new one in to make sure the fixture's working. Right. You're just going to report out there that the light didn't work, and so then then it becomes a question of, is it because of the bulb or is it because of the electrical system? So being proactive and having that taken care of in advance is certainly just an easy, quick fix that you can do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And have you ever had sellers put out, when you're doing the inspection, like different things that they've done to the house or
all the time
stuff like that? Does that come into, does that do anything? I mean, is that something that you report, or what do you do with that information?
So I look at it, but I'm never going to take somebody else's word for repair work that might have been done. And so it is nice, getting back to your question, it is nice when people do things like that, because it does show that they're proactive. And I use the terminology all the time. It shows them that they're living and treating the home as a home and not a house. And there's a big difference, in my opinion. A home is where you go, you have a family, you better the structure of the home, you take care of it, you maintain it, you get that HVAC service, things like that. A house is maybe just where you just go to sleep. You're doing bare minimum. You're not changing the filters out. You're not doing any of those things or anything like that. And so there's always a big difference when I see those two type of things.
They list the house. Another big thing that I just popped in my mind is even wood rot and painting chip. I mean, you're going to, so if they're walking out the house, walk around the house and look for any of those issues, because you're going to call it out, right, if you see it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And if somebody's getting a loan and they're going FHA or VA, it's going to have to be fixed. So, just go ahead and have it taken care of. So any final thoughts before we conclude this? Good.
I think we're good.
We covered it, guys. We covered it. If you are watching this and we did not cover something that you have a question about, post it in the comments, and we will get back with you and answer any of those questions, those concerns that you have. Again, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in. But again, feel free to comment or reach out to us.